All right, so the Lions lose in Philadelphia 16-9, and at no point in time was the game even uh, fun to watch, to be honest. It was a really disgusting football game from every stretch of the imagination when you think about all the things that could happen potentially in a game where you're like, okay, this is a game where potentially if you're playing the best, you can get away with some stuff. In today's game, there was nothing that you can get away with. I thought it was one of the most disgusting games in many outputs. We'll get into the specifics tomorrow on the Detroit Lions News podcast YouTube page, but for right now, let me just put it to you simply like this. I thought this was the worst game that Dan Campbell has ever called as a head coach of the Detroit Lions. I'm not saying it was what lost him the game, but when you think about it like this, you just kicked a field goal at the end of the game to get it within striking distance, right? You could have done that earlier, but you wanted to outsmart yourself. See, I have no problem with what Dan Campbell did today, because the wind was a factor and everyone knew it was a factor. But the reality of the situation is you got to take the points when you can get them, and you don't know how you're going to be able to get down there. And I looked at this game, and you know the Detroit Lions dominated. They just dominated the Philadelphia Eagles through the air, through the ground. At one point, they had, I think it was 6.7 yards per play, and we ended up with 5.3 yards per play. The Eagles had 3.9. Now, the only difference in this game was we made it to the red zone once and did not capitalize. They made it to the red zone 3 times. They did not capitalize on a touchdown, but they got, 2 field goals. And you look at the score, and there you go. So we came into this game, like I came into this game, and I was very keen on you had to get the play action going, right? The play action had to get going. The run game had to get going. The one thing that I see, I actually watched just with all you guys. I know we watched this and it was absolutely terrible. Um, Yards per rush, the Detroit Lions 3.5, the Eagles 3.7. The Eagles had 40 rushing attempts for 148 yards. The Detroit Lions had 21 rushing attempts for 74 yards. And look, I can't sit here and tell you that Jared Goff was the reason we lost. I can't sit there and tell you that because the way I look at it, Jared Goff played a huge role in the way that this team played. The offensive line played a huge role in the way that this team lost. And I'm just like all of you guys. I don't know what the coach was thinking. Usually I have a good read of what he's trying to do. Today I did not. And this is a bad loss. It just is. The Eagles are not doing anything spectacular. Like I said, 3.9 yards per play, 124 yards passing. You had 6.2 yards per pass when you completed it. You completed it 14 times. So did the Eagles. They completed it 14 times. You got sacked twice. They got sacked once. You threw an interception. You gifted them points. Boom. I thought the Lions gifted them points, not just on the scoreboard. They also gifted them field position. Going for it as many times as they did. I could sit here and you could be all aggressive all you want. Like I don't care if you're aggressive. That doesn't bother me any bit. But when you're aggressively stupid and you're going against everything that you're trying to accomplish, that's where I have a problem. And I thought Dan Campbell really outcoached himself tonight. I thought coming into this matchup, I thought Nick Sirianni would do something stupid, and he did. He did do something stupid. He went for that stupid tush push on 4th down, which was the dumbest thing that got Detroit back in the game. But I look at this whole game. There's nothing that you could take away from this game that is rewarding. I think what I watched from the Detroit Lions was absolute just trash. Once again, it didn't matter who was calling plays for the Detroit Lions. It really didn't, because the offensive line wasn't getting a good push. And when I looked at Pro Football Focus at the end, near the end of the game, Sewell led the team in pressures with Tate Ratledge. So you think that Sewell's going to be your best player? Wasn't your best player. That's just the way it goes. So very frustrating night for the Detroit Lions, and I think that everyone can echo the same thing. I think that's the major sticking point right here. Is you expected more? It was a tough day for the offense, but I'm not going to panic. This team is still good. They need to get their stuff together, though. They got a game against the Giants, is a which could be a more challenging game for this team because of their front seven. So that'll be a very good test as you go into Green Bay, as you go into play Dallas at home, as you play the Rams on the road. It's going to be, can you play your best football going into January? That's basically where I stand. Can you play the best football going into January? I think home field advantage, as we know it, is out of the equation. I don't think they're getting home field advantage. I think they had if they lost, there's a 33% chance. I think that's closer to 20, to be honest. But when you can't win like you did, you can't win like you did play today. And just a very disgusting game. And both quarterbacks, like I said, both quarterbacks were equally bad. They were equally bad. Both had 14 completions, and both, Jared Goff threw 37 times. Jalen Hurts threw 28 times. Jalen Hurts had 135 yards. Jared Goff had over 255. He had 255 on the nose. Just not good football. And what it really comes down to is they stuck with the running game, and the Eagles stuck with the running game, and the Lions didn't. That's the real cork of this. Because when you look at the 21 carries that the Detroit Lions had for 74 yards, you look at how many carries the Eagles had, 40 for 148. They coached the right way, with the right conditions, and they played, keep away basically. And even them running as much as they did, it's still the time of possession was, it was closer at around the third quarter, but they got you for 10 minutes. They got the Detroit Lions for 10 minutes. So they stuck with the run game. Detroit didn't. They got to the red zone 3 times and converted once. You got to the red zone once and you did not convert. And that's the difference in the game. And, I think everyone that watched that game probably wants a do-over. You want a rematch. I want a rematch. I think the Lions, if they played better, they win that game. But the run game's got to get a lot better. And they have to play a lot better as a group. That was just disgusting football from every stretch of the imagination. Like I said, you got to capitalize on your opportunities, and this is something I think Dan Campbell is going to have to rain down as he talks to them this week. And you have to be better running the football. Period. And I thought what the statistics laid out, man. The statistics laid out. Even though their yards per rush were 3.7, they stuck with it more than Detroit. And I came into this game saying, if you stick with the run game and maybe you can get the play action going, because we talked about it in the beginning of this podcast. Thursday's podcast, we talked about it. The Eagles were one of the worst defenses at defending a play action pass. And by you not being able to run and them being able to drop in coverage, knowing that you're not going to do a play action pass because your run game was off tilted, it plays right into their hands. And it's a classic Vic Fangio defense. They love when they can sit back, they know what you have to do, and they do it. That's what makes Vic Fangio one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. And hats off to Calvin Shepard as well, because Calvin Shepard, he coached a hell of a game today. He deserved a lot better than a 19-6 loss. This game is definitely not on the defense, but just a terrible way to go about it. Let's get to some comments. I know a lot of people have comments. There's 30 comments on the thing right now. Um, Neither team played well outside the defense. You're exactly right. Goff is horrible and cost us the game. I can't say Goff cost you the game. Just can't. I think that Goff played a role in costing you the game. But when I look at it line by line, Dan Campbell cost you the game. Offensive line, Jared Goff, they all get lumped into the same thing. Even Amon St. Brown. Amon St. Brown had a terrible game today. Terrible game. Donovan Lee Jones, Jewers says Lions played like shit besides defense. Unfortunate but true. That's a great way to put it. Just simply put, they played like crap. Robert says played a good team for once. Where was the 45 points from last week? Well, you just answered your own question, Robert. Shane says Goff is to blame yet, but yeah, MCDC is more. Look, I don't care which way you put it. There is multiple ways that you could put this loss on. But I just put them collectively together. Like I look at this, I look at the wide receivers as well. Like I know no one was credited for a drop, but Jameson Williams had one drop. I think Pro Football Focus credited him for a drop. But St. Brown had 12 targets and 2 catches. So it is what it is. Just not a good game. There we go. They got their asses kicked. This is a good one. Levi John Bush says St. Brown has dropped and missed catches nonstop the last few weeks and had bad coaching cost us points and first downs. Again, this is probably the best comment I've got so far. What it comes down to is exactly what you just said. Coaching, bad coaching costs you points because I think the average time that the Eagles, what was their average where they started? I think the average was like 42 yards, the 42-yard line. You're going to get beat every time if you give a team 42-yard line. It's ironically what the Lions did today is ironically similar to what they did against the Vikings, if you really want the truth. Because what they did against the Vikings, they gifted the Vikings 17 points. You could say the Detroit Lions pretty much gifted the Eagles, what do you want to say, 10 points? That's a difference right there. Kurt says Philly's tougher. I don't know how you really decipher who's tougher when it's a 19-6 game, 19-16 game. I don't know how you decipher that. Goff needed to take off the glove. Look, everyone's going to come at Goff. I understand they're going to come at Goff. Goff played like crap. So did Jalen Hurts. I thought neither quarterback could get on target. But what it boils down to me and what it boils down to the statistics is they stuck with the run game more than you. They got 148 yards. You got 74. They had 40 rushing attempts. You had 21. They had 10 more minutes of time of possession. So you can blame Goff all you want, but I kind of blame Dan Campbell because they didn't stick with the run game. I think if you would have stuck with the run game a little bit more, maybe you would have had a chance to win the football game because you basically got coached by Nick Sirianni, who I think is a total doofus. Well, I can give kudos to the defense by Luffy Man. Luffy Man also says part of it is we can't forget the Eagles have a great defense front line. Look, coming into this game and going into the Green Bay game and going into the LA game, you got to remember two things. There's two things that have to be remembered by the Lions fan base because I don't think they get you people sometimes lose fact over fiction. Here's a fact. If you don't play well against the good teams, they will beat you. Like it's just that simple. And the second part about it is if you go and you play a team like the Eagles whose defensive line is great, they're absolutely phenomenal. Jalen Carter is one of the best. Jordan Davis, he's been playing at his best ball. Jalen Phillips is pretty good, but they got a lot of guys that are pretty good, and they play a 3-4, and it's a different type of defense. But if you can't block them, I don't care who your quarterback is. Actually, I had this statistic up, and I'm gonna put this up because Hutch said this before the game. He said he called this a must-win. Well, he lost. But here's the deal. So I went and looked at the best quarterbacks under pressure, and I was shocked to hear the statistic. So the 10 best passers was pressure. A list that consists of Daniel Jones, Spencer Rattler, Mac Jones, Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, and CJ Stroud. I'm pretty sure none of us would take any of those quarterbacks besides maybe Baker and Jalen, maybe CJ Stroud, if he's healthy. The bottom 10 quarterbacks, and this is what threw me through a loop. The bottom 10 quarterbacks bottom 10 quarterbacks in pressure is Patrick Mahomes, Jared Goff, Bo Nix, Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, Caleb Williams, Cam Ward, and Joe Flacco. I mean, I would take a majority of those quarterbacks over the top. I would take Patrick Mahomes over anybody on the top. I would take Jared Goff over a majority of the top. I would take Jordan Love. I don't even like Jordan Love, but I'd take him over Spencer Rattler, Daniel Jones, Mac Jones, and Justin Fields. Caleb Williams, yeah, he's a total head case. But that's basically what it comes down to. So if you can't block a team like the Eagles, you're gonna have a rough time. Now, as I parade the whole Twitter sphere, no comments from Dan Campbell yet, so I will be eager to get that. But that's it. That is what it is. Let's get to some comments. More comments here. Alex says the Goff is Dan is well. This is so stupid. 1990s Detroit Lions. Interesting comparison. How about you give me a reason why? I think the 1990s Detroit Lions, there's two stark differences. One, they can run the football at a consistent pace. They didn't have a quarterback. Their defense was pretty good, but all in all, they didn't have a guy like Amos. They didn't have a good wide receiver core. I mean, Herman Moore and Brett Perriman were great, but this is a better team. Way better. The D played great. We did not execute on offense. The SPA call sucked, but we had our chances. Still love our Lions. Yeah, when we look back at this game, the Lions absolutely had their chances. They absolutely had their chances. There's no doubt they had their chances because, like I said, when you go back and you look at the statistics, just rattle them off. You were 3 for 13 on third down, 0 for 5 on fourth down. So you put it all together, you were pretty much 3 for 17 the whole game. And then you look at the Eagles, they were 4 for 15, and that one that they converted probably was the difference. Probably was the difference. And Detroit dominated in yards per play. They had opportunities. They only got in the red zone once, and they failed to capitalize. And you look at that score, 16-9. You look at the score, 16-9, and that was the game right there. And I felt like saying it when it happened, when they didn't score in the red zone. I felt like that was the end. Like you do not get many chances to capitalize if you don't capitalize. Cody says, kick some more field goals, have Goff take some quick tosses. This is probably a well thought out one. Obviously, they should have kicked some more field goals. Obviously, with the wind the way it was, I mean, it worked out for Jake Elliott. He was 3 for 3. So if you take 3 for 3, you take his 3 field goals off the board. You got 13, 10, and then 7. So they would have been a Lions should have definitely kicked some more field goals. That was just ridiculous. got through 37%, you buffoon. I don't know what he mean by 37%. If you're talking about completion percentage, yeah, when you look at both quarterbacks, they both completed 14 passes. Jared Goff threw 10 more passes than Jalen Hurts. Whatever, dude. Whatever. Ken Powell, head coach laid an egg. Goff had more batted balls than Ra had catches. Think about that. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 12 targets, 2 catches. I don't think Amon-Ra St. Brown is some that doesn't get he doesn't get the blame because there's a couple passes he should have caught, to be honest. Which Luffy Man says same thing. Rob played bad as well. Jameson played good. Jameson did play good. Ryan says take the points. And look, I think this is a game that if I'm Dan Campbell, if I'm the coaching staff of that Detroit Lions team, like I go in the next time we play a good team and I'm taking the effing points, man. Because if you look at the score, if you would have just kicked 2 field goals, you'd be within 1. And you would have been within a field goal. So, I mean, obviously every game is different, and the way the wind was going and everything made it a little bit tougher. But the reality of the situation is they should have kicked more field goals. That's just the way it goes. Refs, coaches, and players have been caught. No, it's whatever. Time for Goff to get on plane and out of here. I'd like to see Baker Mayfield in a Lions. Well, okay, I want Patrick Mahomes in a Lions uniform. Okay, like use your brain. It's not happening. Baker Mayfield's not leaving Tampa Bay. Stop it. I don't know why it takes some stupid comments. Another dumb comment. I'm not even gonna give that one anything. Matthew says this is not a Goff issue. Bad win, terrible pass coverage. No Laporta dropped passes and still threw 250 yards. Agreed. 100%. I don't believe this is just on Goff. If you really want to be honest, every third down, the absence of Sam Laporta was magnified. Like when St. Brown's getting passed to and he's just the ball's going right through his hands. When you know they're gonna have to pass deeper and say there's no Sam Laporta to go up the middle. I thought Sam Laporta not being with the Detroit Lions tonight was a huge factor, way bigger than any of us could have thought. Way bigger than any of us could have thought. So Matthew, great comment. Besides the defense, this was a team loss across the board. And Mary, you are exactly right. I love when people actually get the premise, man. Like here's the thing. This wasn't just Jared Goff. Okay. This wasn't just Dan Campbell. Okay. One of the best players on your team in Penei Sewell had led the team in pressures nearly. And then you had a guy who you just paid a bunch of money to, who I love. I love Aiden Hutchinson. Love him. But there was times where Aiden Hutchinson lost containment. He only had 3 tackles. He had half a sack. He had no pass defended, and he had 1 QB hit. Not good enough from your number 1 defensive end. Not good enough. And you know, Mohammed, he was basically silent either. And I look at this defense and I go, Campbell, Sin, Anzalone, Branch, Harper, Tyleek Williams, those guys played phenomenal. But then you look at how many QB hits the Eagles had. They had 7. You had 2. Your defense had 2. And it's not just saying that the defense played bad. They didn't. They played great. But your quarterback got rocked a majority of the game. I'm interested to see what the statistics are like tomorrow via Pro Football Focus. When I was checking it during the game, Sewell had 2, Ratledge had 2, Glasgow had 1, Decker had 1, all those guys. It was just not good. These Chris is a dummy. We all love Dan, but he is not an OC. We are in need of some adjustments with this offensive coachship so we could adjust when needed. Huh. This is an interesting one because, you do look at it from the perspective of Dan Campbell is calling plays now. Um, to me, this was more of an issue. See, the offense was doing really good. Like I can go back to it right now. The offense was averaging 5.3 yards per play, which was the best on the whole team, right? So you think about it like this: 5.3 yards per play. You didn't get in the red zone once. I don't really think it's a Dan Campbell play calling issue as much as it's a offense laid an egg issue. Like that's just what it is. And going back to Amon-Ra St. Brown thing, Amon-Ra St. Brown had 12 targets and 2 catches. Not what you want to see from your reliable wide receiver. Jahmyr Gibbs led us in receiving. Like if you would not have had Jahmyr Gibbs, I guarantee you wouldn't have had any points. Any points. Because he was huge. He had 107 yards receiving on 5 receptions, 8 targets. And JMO had played pretty well, but besides that, the whole offense as a whole laid an egg. And I wonder, here's the thing I wonder. Dave Montgomery didn't get used as much as he should have in this game. And I think that's a major issue that Dan Campbell really needs to talk about, because when you look at what Dave Montgomery was able to do in this game, 4.5 yards per carry, 6 carries for 27 yards, you kind of go, okay, it wasn't working with Gibbs. Okay, get Gibbs out there in the pass game, get Gibbs out there on a toss play, do something. But let's soft up that defense with Dave Montgomery, the battering ram. And they just couldn't do it. So that's the way I look at it. James Dillard says the offense wasn't just there. As soon as Laporta got thrown on IR, I knew it was going to be one hell of a test. Campbell also sold on that game by costing us around 9 points with going for it on first downs. We need our offense and defense healed up. Exactly. And when we go back to last year, I'd hate to do this going back to last year, but going back to last year at this point in time, remember we still had Lee McNeil. He didn't get injured until the Buffalo game. We lost Hutch. We lost Rodrigo for the season. A lot of these guys are going to come back. Kirby's going to come back. Mahogany's going to come back. DJ Reed's going to come back. Terry Arnold's going to come back. So I'm not worried about this team at all. I just think that they have a really tough schedule with the 3 games in 11 days, with the Giants coming up next, the Packers, and then they got to play the Cowboys on Thursday Night Football. Those will all reign supreme. But for me, I'm a little bit relaxed in knowing that we're going to get some players back. We're going to play a lot better. And that's just the way I look at it right there. Now, Dan Campbell is speaking to the media, I believe, right now. Let me play you some audio from the coach, because I really think you should hear from the coach. So I will play some audio like I usually do on the podcast. So here is Dan Campbell saying on tonight's loss. I'll get back and let's listen to what the coach says here.
All right. Credit to those guys over there. They earned that win. They made they made the plays in the critical moments. They're at the end to win it. So that's what they've done. It's proud of the way the guys played. I thought they played their tails off, played hard, man. I thought we finished plays, tried to finish plays. I thought we were disciplined for the most part. But just, defense, I thought really, really played their tails off, I thought they showed up, played championship style defense. That they had to put out a number of fires there between the takeaways and the 4th down stops. But like I told them, man, yeah. But it's also you got the hot hand. You gotta beat them back one more time. And then offensively, 3 of 13, 0 on 3rd down, and 0 of 5 on 4th down. We could not convert, and when you can't convert, that makes it very difficult. felt like we were going to get in a rhythm after that second quarter. We started, we hit those explosives, went down, J-Mo scores, touchdown, and it felt like, all right, here we go. But just couldn't ever really get in a rhythm offensively. There's some calls I wish I could have gotten back. I didn't help those guys, and I hate that. I didn't help them. So, but that was kind of the.
All right, so you hear Coach there, and I echo some of the things that he says. Um, he's gonna want some plays back that he called. He just is, and the way I look at it, there was calls that he could have made that could have been a difference in the game. He didn't make those correct calls. Um, and he admitted to you that, and that's what Coach Campbell does. He's a stand-up dude who's gonna admit when he's wrong. And it's kind of a work in progress. But here's the thing: I'm not worried about this team. Just not. I'm not worried about this team. Jared Goff's going to be a lot better. The run game is really becoming an issue, to be honest, because when I look at the run game in the way that I look at the run game, because I think you have a lot of stats now on the whole season. When you look at the team's rushing yards per game, it's still high. It's still top in the league. It's I think it's eighth or whatever. They're averaging 136.3 yards per game. But when I look at the reality of the situation is they are not they're not for some reason there's games that they come out and the run game looks fantastic, right? And then there's some games that they just look like absolute dog crap. And there's no other way to put it. And tonight was a game where I thought they left the run game a little bit too early. They misused not using Dave Montgomery. I thought that was a big one. But when you look at it from the perspective of just the way that this team is able to do things, they weren't able to do what they were able to do. And Campbell talked afterwards how it was rare for tonight for Goff and St. Brown to be off the way they were. Goff targeted St. Brown 12 times, and he caught just 2 of those for 42 yards. Like I said, just a huge, huge, huge issue for the Detroit Lions was St. Brown had an off night. Goff had an off night. What a great night to have 2 of your best players have an off night. Colton Pouncy says, Campbell said, I don't believe that's a norm. We could not quite convert. I don't believe that's here to stay. Coach says, I'll play this for you because I think this is kind of skews into what I was about to say, but I'll let you hear it from Coach.
Our chances, we didn't get it done. They made the most of the opportunity, we didn't. But we're right there, and we understand what it is, and we understand we make 1 or 2 more plays in certain areas, then you got the legit shot to win that game at the end. So it is as bad as it stings, as bad as it is, we're so freaking close, and I mentioned this before, you just kind of hit some of these patches here. We're middle way through the season. We're in November, and I believe this is the best thing for us. You don't want to say that, and it doesn't feel good, but yet, man, we're going to learn from this. We're going to get better. We're going to adjust, and we'll be hitting our stride when other teams start to hit their adversity towards the back end of the season. I really believe that. So
All right. So you heard Coach Campbell there, and Coach Campbell said exactly what I was going to say, because I look at this like this is a good thing, because last year you went into the playoffs, and I felt like you had no adversity, none whatsoever. I think the biggest adversity you had were injuries, and you still won 15 games. You go into the playoffs, you find yourself down after a couple turnovers, and the Commanders run you out of the building. Like I thought that was the biggest thing last year in terms of what the Commanders were able to do. But when we look at this season and what the Detroit Lions are able to do, they're able to grow off this and they're able to learn what they're good at. And they're 3-3 on the road. Last year they were undefeated. They lost one game at home that they should not have lost, but they got to start winning football games. And the way you look at this is the Lions have a tough schedule coming up. Obviously, we know they play the Packers on Thanksgiving. I don't think you could take for granted the game against the Giants because the Giants do have a good defensive line. But I think every team that you are going to play for the rest of the season has a pass rush. There is no team that you're not going to play that does not have a pass rush. So the way I look at this is the best thing for this team because they're going to have to learn what they can do right and what they can't do. Obviously, we know offensive line was going to take a little bit of a step back. We all were aware of that. But when we look at this situation, you could learn a lot off these last couple games because I look at every team on the schedule. The Giants have a good defensive line. The Packers can rush the passer. The Cowboys could rush the passer. The Rams could rush the passer. The Steelers have T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith. The Vikings could rush the passer. The Bears, not really, but that's the last game of the season. So I think you can learn a lot from this stretch. I think you can learn a lot from this quarter that you had. This was the first 4-game stretch where the Detroit Lions went 2-2 since I think it was the last time they went 2-2 was after that 1-6 start. I believe that. I think that was part of it. But really interesting what Coach Campbell said, and it just goes to show you that that's exactly what it says. Now, I did want to put this out here. Week 11. This is from Al. Carson, the football guy, Al. He says the week 11 marked the third time this season that Kelvin Shepherd's Lions defense has held opponent under 275 yards and still lost. That's twice. Well, 3 times. His unit ranks 5th in the league, allowing 291.8 yards per game with a season high of 355 yards allowed in week 6 at Kansas City. Your defense is playing well. I think it's just about, can you get your offense to play well? We know that there's foibles. We know that there's issues with the protection. We know that there's issues with, guys like Tate Ratledge, who is a rookie, but you don't expect Penei Sewell to have the game that he had today either. So all of it's going to work itself out. I'm not really concerned. I think a lot of people in the comments are really concerned for whatever the reason. But even this there's a couple guys. There's a couple guys in the comments. I'll read them. NFL Raffenmeyer says 2 total catches by St. Brown. What did I see? You seen Goff and St. Brown have a bad game together. That doesn't usually happen. AB says go Birds. Good game. Good game to you, dude. Hopefully we see you in the NFC Championship. I know you guys will probably be hosting, but let's go for the rematch. Defense stopped the brotherly love shove. We put Hurts on the ground and we held him under 20. If there's anything that you could take out of this game, defense played well. I'll get to that in my last little soliloquy. Luffy Man says Dan can do so much if guys can't execute. There's blame go around. Exactly. Yes, Gibbs played great. Ethan, who is on around St. Brown's fan, he says season is over. And there's we are cooked. No, you're not. We did well against the tush push. Yes, you did. Yes, the Lions did. James Diller says we're gonna have to learn how to adjust without Laporta since he's on iron. He'll be gone at least 4 weeks. This is going to be the most interesting time for Laporta to be gone because of who you're going to play. You're going to play the Giants and you're going to play the Cowboys and you're going to play the Packers. So if you can learn to adjust without Laporta, I think it sets you up for better things going into this into the playoffs because you're going to get Laporta back. And then that's only going to add to your offense. So how do they adjust? How do they get better without Laporta over these next 4 games? That's going to be the real telling thing. Luffy Man says some of the run game is hurt by the O-line not being as good as last year when Frank retired. Absolutely. So of it, can it just be growing pains of having new coordinators? I think back to the Eagles when they lost nine. They were Eagles. They were lost 9 to 10 in a row. Um, it partly is the coordinators. Losing the coordinators does suck, but it is what it is. Luffy's man says they're not concerned, and I agree with you 100%. Let's see if there's anything that Dan Campbell has said that would be more. Here's Sam.
Well, obviously,
Here's about Sam Laporta. We never got to hear about Coach Campbell. And this is a huge thing because we were all talking about Laporta. This is from the Detroit Lions Twitter fear. We are going to play this because this is a very interesting thing he says, and this is not good news.
enough to where we we're talking about 4 weeks here. So obviously we're going to hope that this thing calms down, and after those 4 games, we can get him back. But we're really just taking this day to day, week to week. I'm hopeful, but I really don't know.
That is not what you want to hear about your number one tight end. That he doesn't know if he's going to be able to come back. That's a very concerning comment, to be honest. And that is from the Detroit Lions Twitter.com. But you look at it and you go, if he can't come back, that's a big issue for this Detroit Lions team. So I will just on the podcast like this. There's a couple ways I could take this whole game. I'm pretty sure a lot of you are going to take this and you're gonna play doom and gloom because I think that's what a lot of fans do, and I think talk radio, especially around Detroit, is going to be it's going to be on fire tomorrow, especially with the Valeni show and all that jazz. But what I look at, I don't claim to be a guy that plays the game where I need to talk for ratings. Okay, I don't need to do that. Just don't need to do that. So when I say this, I'm saying this with all certainty. The Lions had their chances to win today's football game. Period. They did not win today's football game. That's also a fact. But when I look at this team going forward, there's really good things I could take out of this because I watched Jared Goff have his worst game. I watched Amon-Ra St. Brown have his worst game. I watched Penei Sewell have his worst game. And still you were able to come within a touchdown of winning the football game. So I'm not really concerned about this team moving forward. I'm just not. And I know a lot of people in the comments are saying where the Lions are cooked or the season's over. I don't know how many of you have experienced the NFL season, but it seems like, with the 15 wins the Detroit Lions had last year, it kind of skewed people's brains that 15 wins was the norm. If you go back over the last 15 years, there's only been 5 teams that had 15 wins. 3 of them happened last year. It's out of the norm. And if you finish 11-6, 12-5, which is looking like not going to happen, but if you finish with 6 losses, you still got a good chance to win the Super Bowl. And so that's the way this thing goes. And I look at some of the offense, and you had a better offense than the Eagles had today, and you just didn't convert. That's the way I look at it. Now, people that are going to sell you fear to drive clicks, they're going to tell you, "Oh, this is it. This is it. Jared Goff can't do it. This is going to happen. This is going to happen." If you just look at it the way it is, just the way it is, the Detroit Lions played a good game today. They had a chance to win this football game. They beat themselves. Okay? There's nothing you could say out of the regular that this team is going to be done. Because I watched a team today who the quarterback was having his worst game. Your best wide receiver was having his worst game. Your best tackle was having his worst game, and you still came within a touchdown of winning the football game. Like, that's not normal. But your defense is good, but your team is good, so you're going to be able to weather the storm better than other teams. But let's just put it like this. They got to get a lot better. Coach Campbell's got to get a lot better in the way he coaches, the way he calls the game. Like I said, I think he could have used Dave Montgomery better. He did not, and that's why you lost this game. So I don't look at this as it's the end all be all, but this is going to be a tough stretch. You're going to learn a lot more about your team, and if the chips fall where the chips fall, and Laporta can't come back or something like that, it sucks. But this team is heading they are playing well, regardless of what people want to say, and regardless of whatever everyone wants to say. I look back at the Vikings game; they should not have lost that game. I look back at this Eagles game tonight; they had their chances. They're just missing their chances. So all the chances that they got last year, they're not taking advantage of this year. That's just the way it boils down. Because you remember back to last year, that Sunday night football game against the Houston Texans, and the Texans had 4 interceptions, and they still lost the game. Detroit shouldn't have won that game, but they did. So sometimes it regresses to the mean. I think that's kind of like where we are right now, because you've had a couple bad games and you didn't get away with it. You had a bad game last year, you got away with it. So that's just the way I look at it. This is going to be an interesting thing, but we'll see what happens, and we'll see what this team is capable of over the next couple of weeks, because schedule doesn't get easier. As I said, the Giants, Packers, Cowboys, Rams, 4 games in a row, 4 tough games, 3 games in 11 days. Started this tonight, and it's only gonna get tougher. So it is what it is. We will see you guys in the next podcast. We talk more Detroit Lions football. We have a new YouTube channel. If you're watching, there's a lot of people watching on X. There's a lot of people watching on the Detroit Lions News podcast. The YouTube is Detroit Lions News Podcast on YouTube. I'll share a link on Twitter. I'll share a link on the podcast page. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one as we talk more Detroit Lions football here on the Detroit Lions News Podcast. I couldn't get to all the comments, but I will have this podcasted for you in the morning if you missed any of it at any point in time. I'll see you in the next one as we talk tomorrow about the PFF grades and all that jazz.